Set up on the live stream.
Great. It's working. Hi, everybody. We're so glad you're along. Some of our team are going to be joining us from our varying places around this fabulous state of Arizona. Sorry if the quality's not great. We're doing the best we can to answer our telephones and turn off our ringers and do all of our goodness from an RV park in the middle of Arizona.
Turn off the ringers.
Yeah, we're caught up in just a trifecta of nonsense around here. Tim Gilman right there. That's Wanda. I'm Doug. That's Shelley. That's on there. Some of our other team are going to be popping in here too. And we're going to give you a little update on what we've been doing on the We the People ride. We've been riding our bicycles across this country from San Diego, California, and we're now in Sierra Vista, Arizona. Somewhere between, if you know these places, Nogales, Arizona, and Douglas, Arizona. A significant place in the story of immigration in this country. It's what are often referred to as the borderlands. And these two towns and their sister towns in Mexico of Nogales, Mexico, and Agua Prieta, Mexico, are really important places. And we spent 2 days at a shelter with asylum seekers in Nogales just the last 2 days. And tomorrow we'll be in Douglas, Arizona, and then Saturday and Sunday over in Agua Prieta, getting ourselves close to what's going on. So part of our update today is going to be biking updates, how that's going, because this is the We the People ride, and we're riding bicycles to stay close to these stories. So I want to give you that. Also tell you what was going on in Ajo, Arizona, where we were. We went out in the went working with the people who go out into the desert to leave water for migrants that are crossing the deserts. It's a really powerful time. And then talk to you about what we experienced in the shelter and with Border Patrol that we've been seeing and some apprehensions that have gone on. So a whole lot of things over the course of these next few minutes. Some of our team might be popping in. We're staying in 2 different places right now. The 3 of us are here at this RV park. Others are over at a hotel. We were all going to camp here at this RV park, but it rained here today in Arizona. And it rained all day until just a few hours ago, right during our biking time. So it was cold, mid 50s temperature wise, and raining on us for most of our 65-mile ride today. So it was a lot of work and a lot of effort. But Tim, Wanda, any updates from the 2 of you? I'm going to send a little message off to the rest of our team, make sure they know we're.
What do you think, Wanda?
Except in Nogales.
It was, yeah, Nogales was very amazing. We spent 2 nights with about, I'd say 100, at least 100 asylum seekers, families that have, met the standard to be considered for asylum, but still have to stay on the other side of the border and await the roulette wheel turning. It was great. It was a lot of little kids. I mean, you realize that dynamic of this thing real fast. And it was great. There's an organization there of a retired nun from Colombia, I believe, that really managed it for them. And it was just really a well-run place, very clean, very efficient. And it was great to be there.
Hi, Anthony. Anthony is one of our riders that was with us. Anthony's someone who's come in for a few days. He came in on Monday. Do I have that right, Anthony? I've sort of lost track of days. I don't remember what day it is today. I guess today is Thursday. You might be muted still, Anthony. Anthony will give us a little update. He's somebody that's come in for a few days along the ride. And I'll brag on Anthony's riding for a minute here. Anthony came in and day 1 on Monday or something, met up with us halfway through the ride that day because he flew in from Chicago. And man, next thing you know, he's riding 32 miles across the desert. And then today he rode 65 miles.
New PR.
A new personal record. Yeah. Anthony, give us a little, any update you have on the riding so far, or on what you've
Yeah.
experienced with us?
Yeah, I mean, in regards to the writing, it's been so confession. I got a Peloton a few months ago, which has saved me from literally dying at mile 10. So that's been super helpful. So kind of tried to get in some miles on that. So it's been kind of nice to ease in. Although today was not an easing in doing the 65 or however many we did today. But it's great. It's great to be outside. Doug and I were talking about how beautiful Arizona is, and surprisingly, just a variety of landscapes. You've got some flat road, you've got some up and down, and then we were looking at mountains today. And we've had all sorts of weather, which kind of surprised me. I was expecting like 90 degrees every day, and we rode in driving rain for, I don't know, well, maybe not driving rain, but definitely wet and cold for the first half of the ride today. But yeah, the riding's been great, and actually kind of, it's been a lot of time to reflect and kind of think and process about kind of what we're doing here. So rather than just kind of coming down and talking to people, you have these long stretches, 3, 4, 5 hours a day where you're on the bike, sometimes looking at desert, sometimes going through little towns, sometimes going through big towns or around big towns and cities. And so you see the variety of life and experiences that people have down here on the border. And it's just a good opportunity. If you were driving it, it's just not the same. So it's a great opportunity to really kind of be breathing the same air and experiencing the weather and the scenery and life, albeit very abbreviated, but experiencing life like someone would who is either living here or passing through. So I think, I'm sure a lot of thought went into why biking, but to me, kind of just dropping in, it was immediately apparent how beneficial that's been, to kind of be on the road, if you will. And we'll pop into convenience stores, and I watched Doug interview kind of a lifelong cowboy in a small local grocery / convenience store today. You open yourself up to those experiences and those conversations that if you were just kind of going to an event or going to an asylum center or going to a specific spot, you could easily miss by just spending those long hours. And then you have the time to reflect on those experiences, because you're just churning the legs for hour after hour after hour. And so I've really enjoyed the biking part. I mean, I've enjoyed it all, but since we're talking about the bike right now, that's been great. And obviously we have the trailer, and there's water breaks every 10 miles. You can stop, and some people are riding the whole stretch, some people aren't. So it does, even if I wouldn't have kind of prepped somewhat to kind of come in and hopefully be able to do the 65 or whatever we did today, the 50 miles, you get that same experience coming in and doing 15 miles or 20 miles. So I've really enjoyed that aspect of this.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, great. We should know that Brandon, who's now on the screen, you'll see him there, and Tim are our primary vehicle support people. So right now we're in an RV. Brandon might be somewhere nearby a truck that pulls a trailer. They have a whole life of their own, these trucks and RVs and trailers. We had a day of flats, 2 bicycle tire flats. Mario, who's still at a bike shop right now at this late hour, and me, we had flat tires today and had to try to fix those or swap bikes. And then our trailer had a flat. And we had, right when they were picking up the riders at the end of the day, the trailer pulled up, and right there, tire blew out. So we had to jack up the trailer and take off the tire and put on a spare, and all of that at the end of a day. So the riding side is full of all kinds of this business. So we're gonna give you little updates on the people we met here in a minute, but I want you to notice Dan down there on the bottom. If you see him on the screen the way we do, that's Daniel Dietrich. Dan came in 2 days ago. Dan, maybe you can tell the story of coming in late at night on Tuesday and crossing the border into Mexico, and then rode with us was today your first day?
Yep.
Good golly. And you're on mute, Dan, but Dan got on a bike that he's never been on before and rode 43 miles in the rain uphill with the wind in his face. I am not even kidding you. All of those things were true. Dan, any
Uphill both ways.
New
Yeah.
career.
Can you hear me okay?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a trial by fire, I guess. I thought we were going to ride through the desert, but we got a rainstorm today. So, but yeah, I got in 2 nights ago, and a driver dropped me off at the border, and Doug said, "Hey, just walk across, and we'll find you." And so I walked across through the checkpoint, carrying my bags, and sure enough, found Brandon Pfeiffer on the other side eventually. And the experience so far has been fantastic. I'm just grateful to be here, grateful to be along for the ride. Yeah, loving every minute of it.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about what happened just last night over in Agua Prieta at the House of Mercy shelter that we Wanda has an update on a number of miles. We forgot to total them up before. We've been at this 14 days now. Of those 14 days, it's going to sound bad, but we've had 3 days off so far with no riding. So it sounds like we're barely riding. But the first day we were in Tijuana and spent time in Arizona. So we call that day one, even though we didn't start riding until the next day. And then we had a day off 2 days ago and a week ago. So we've ridden, as we've been at this 14 days, we've ridden
584.8 miles.
584.8 miles. How do you like that?
Not bad.
And you know, a bunch of flats and a couple of sore legs and butts and all the rest, but so far so good. 3,223 is the expected total distance. So we still have a ways to go at 584 miles, but we're making our way. Hey, let's talk a little bit about last night. Brandon, maybe you and Dan can talk a little bit about what happened musically last night and at the shelter. As Tim mentioned, we're at a shelter that houses 122 asylum seekers, somewhere around 30 families. So it's family units. And we interviewed them, and we'll be breaking out their stories. Many of them didn't want us to show their faces, so we're having to figure out how to take our video and edit the translation because the conversations are all in Spanish. And Anthony has been our translator while we were there, so Anthony, maybe you can tell some stories about that. But getting that real up close. But last night was really fun. So I don't know, Brandon, Dan, you want to say something about what happened last night?
Sure. Can you hear me all right?
Gotcha.
Okay, great. I'm sitting here near the busy road where at any point in time Mario should be driving our truck and trailer in right here. So we'll be ready when he gets here. Last night in Nogales, Mexico was a really, really special and unique event. The whole time was unique and special to be there with these people who have made long and difficult journeys to even get to where they are now, and their journey is not over yet. And so for us to be able to spend time with them was a real treat and honor for us. And just to be able to spend a night having fun and playing. We played music, so we all sang and we danced a little. We ate cookies, and it was just a really fun time. A lot of parents with their families and a lot of young ones just running around everywhere, having a great time. That alone was really fun. But for me, I was blown away by some of the musical talent of some of these kids. It just really surprised me. I mean, I know there's, I know there's a lot of talent in the world, but it was just the fact that this was a 9-year-old girl who has very little opportunity to play a guitar, and she just took the guitar and she had perfect rhythm and just blew me away. So I was making the chords on this side of the guitar, but she was just strumming it, and she was just playing a song for a good minute and a half. She just didn't get tired at all. She was great at it. So that was just really fun to see that. And then we had some phenomenal singers that just kind of popped out of the crowd and sang along with us. And it just was a real special night. I hope some of the videos of that sort of thing can surface at some point too, because that was a really really meaningful night for us.
Yeah, a girl in the group, in the crowd there, said, we asked if there were any suggestions, and she said, do you know, what's the name of the song?
I Can't Help Falling in Love.
She said, do you know I Can't Help Falling in Love by Elvis Presley?
By Elvis Presley.
So here's this little girl, and never saw that
Yeah.
coming. And so Brandon somehow knows this song, starts singing. She starts singing along. He goes over next to her.
Dan starts
She
playing
takes
guitar,
over.
yeah.
Finishes. We got the video. We'll post
Just-
it and show it around.
It's really special.
And it's really that sort of moment, right? And we asked her later, like I asked her, why do you know this old Elvis Presley song? And she said, well, I saw it on YouTube 2 years ago, and the lyrics are so beautiful. And one of her bands that she likes did a cover of it, but it was just this kind of mix of moments. And there were some heartbreaking moments. Anthony, I wonder if you'd be willing to share a little bit about the conversations that you translated. By the way, we have a documentary film crew traveling with us. So have set up, I don't know, Dan, maybe you have some photos on your phone that you could screen share. I don't know if you can do that from an iPhone or whatever you're on there.
Maybe I can. I don't know.
Where we could see some of that. But Anthony, if you were doing the translating, and so you and I are sitting there with the cameras over our shoulders and pointed at these families who said they'd be willing to tell us their stories, and you were translating those. Do you want to give some reflection on any of those pieces?
Yeah, it was, I think in the end, we probably interviewed 4 or 5, 6 families, I think. Either families or individuals. And it was interesting over kind of throughout the morning, we were prepping them and just asking, hey, is there anyone who'd be willing to share their story? And a lot of reticence, a lot of like bashfulness, but compounded with fear of kind of putting your face on camera and telling your story. And then even further than that, the reliving of what they've experienced. So you could imagine it wasn't just, hey, can you sit down in front of the camera and relate, your story? There's all these factors that I think people had to process and work through and decide, like, do I, number one, do I want to be on camera? Number two, am I willing to like put my face out there when a lot of these people are fleeing violent situations? People seeking, violence against them and their families, and also back home. And so, but eventually we kind of had some people, as we talked to them through a couple meals, they started sharing their stories. And the more they shared their stories, kind of the more open they seemed to it. So when it came time to sit down, it was really, really impactful. We're sitting, 4, 5, 6 feet away from them. There's 2 major cameras and a bunch of phones around, and they're sitting there, talking to us in Spanish, really not a lot of Spanish speaking on our side. And so we're relaying these conversations, and once they got going, it was almost hard for them to turn off for a lot of them. And as they were going through, they would talk about, and some of the pictures were popping up of the kids here, which is great. I was thinking about it today on the bike and ended up talking to Doug a little bit about it, but no one kind of sets out to go through what they've been through willy-nilly. Like, no one chooses to leave your home, your friends, your family, a job if you had one, and just a country that you've known your entire life to traverse. I think a lot of the interviews we did a couple from Mexico, and then I think the rest were from Guatemala. And we did one from no, we didn't end up doing, that was a separate conversation, but we talked with someone from El Salvador. And these are long journeys. And you don't know when it's going to end. When you set out, you don't know. You'll be cold and hungry and thirsty, and you'll be sleeping in the open air. You'll be soaked to the bone. And, we were soaked to the bone this morning on the bikes, and we knew that at any point, we could call the truck and it would be there and we could just give up. Or best case scenario, we we're going to bike another 4 hours and finish, and we pat ourselves on the back and be like, hey, we finished. And what they've gone through, it still doesn't have an end. Like, they don't know the ending. They don't know when it ends. And I think, when you go through hardships, the piece that's hard to replicate, the physical piece you can replicate, but the mental anguish that I think a lot of them have been through. And I haven't even, I guess, started talking about what they've gone through, but we spoke to them about everything from really abusive relationships, getting thrown down. And one woman talked about her husband grabbed a stick and has cracked several vertebrae in her back. And she has had one surgery and has to have another surgery on her knee later. Another one, her younger brother was run over basically by a cartel. He was on a bike, on a motorcycle, moped type thing, and was run over, didn't die, but they ended up finishing him off in the hospital, to kind of say it bluntly. You had that. You had just a variety of experiences. You had one couple that had literally spent years kind of working to save, to kind of build a life. And in literally just a couple short weeks, they were extorted, kept demanding it, and then ultimately threatened with their lives. And so they lost everything. They gave everything away to kind of stop the threats. And there's some family dynamics going around that. And even then, when they had nothing left to give, they were still being extorted, and they had no choice but to leave or be killed. And so just to hear that, kind of one interview after another, it really kind of, if one doesn't do it, 3 or 4, like, it brings home how vital, if you believe that all humanity is the same, if you believe that people are the same, whether they're born in Guatemala, and deserve the same love and safety and, the ability to live a life, free from fear of death, constantly, or extreme poverty. If you believe that, and there are people seeking asylum, you have to grapple with it. Like, there's no way around it. No one's choosing to make that journey. And I'm probably going on here too long, but no one's choosing to make that journey just because they think they can come to the US and live off of Social Security. I'm sure there are 2 examples that someone can pull, just like there's 2 examples for everything, but story after story after story is just people that are hardworking, that have gone through stuff that we won't ever experience in our lives.
Yeah.
And the story isn't over. They're literally at the border right now, not knowing the ending to their story. And
Anthony, let's talk about that. A couple of those stories. I'm thinking of the 3 women from Guatemala that we spoke to, all of whom had to travel on their own with their children. Their husbands are not in their lives. The situation that caused them to leave Guatemala are the kinds of things that we would all say would qualify for asylum. They told us through, and you told me through you translating their story, that they met one another. 2 of them were traveling together, and those 2 met another woman from Guatemala while they were in a boxcar on a train. That they didn't use any coyotes or people that helped them get along. They made their way from Guatemala all the way to the border of the United States and Mexico. It took them, do you remember, was it a few months that it took them to travel? Does that sound about right?
Some of the stories are running together. I don't think it was that long, but it was definitely, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Anyway, they were traveling a long time, not sure what they were going to run into. And the whole time listening to these stories, I'm just thinking about how brave these mothers are, right? They were all doing it for their children. Their children are with them. Now, twice today, I heard people tell us in conversations at convenience stores and sort of along the way that we really have to be careful because there's a bunch of people that try to sneak into the country and they're really criminals. And one person said, they just bring children with them and then just get rid of them in the desert just to get in the country, which is not true. But the number of people who believe that that's what's going on. So we're sitting with these women, Anthony, and they're telling us these stories, and they're just so brave, right? And talking about how cold they were and how hungry they were. And to your point earlier, not knowing how long any of this is going to take. All they knew was that life at home was so dangerous, they needed to go. and they needed to get out of there. And they heard that it was possible that they might find safety and help in the United States. It was really, really riveting.
Yeah, I mean, it sticks with you, and it forces you. And we, had this wonderful time at this shelter where, thankfully these families are experiencing for the first time for a lot of them in a long, long time, like this brief moment of security, safety. They're fed, not a lot, but they're fed every day. They work together. They run the shelter. Like, this isn't just, they're not in a hotel being served. Like, they get up, they cook, they clean, they literally participate in this. But it was, that was beautiful to see. And even then, like, they know that it's temporary, and they have these dreams. These three women came from Guatemala. I mean, petite, like small women, that, and you think of traveling in boxcars, sleeping in the open air, with their kids, trying to keep their kids warm, and the amount of sexual violence that a lot of women experience coming through Mexico is really, really high. And, probably knowing all that, and still they had to leave their country, knowing that their children were in harm's way. Like, there are awful things that happen on these there's a lot of people taking advantage of these women. And even then, even knowing that, they still made that journey. And it really puts it into perspective how bad it must have been for them.
And then, as it turns out, it didn't get much better, right? When they got to the border, and we heard this story repeatedly from these three and from nearly everyone we spoke with, was almost the same story. They presented themselves at the US border to the Border Patrol, which is what the law requires someone to do who's seeking asylum. And before the Trump administration put in what's often referred to as a Remain in Mexico program, meaning that asylum seekers who are seeking asylum have to stay in Mexico while their asylum case is being heard, instead of coming into the United States and being, if they have a presumption of asylum, being an asylum grantee, that they can come into the United States and begin that process in the safety of the United States. The Trump administration chose to mandate that people stay in Mexico. The Biden administration used an executive order to end that. The Supreme Court said that executive order is not sufficient to end that. So it's back in place again. So now these women show up. And Anthony, this was really riveting to me when they said, we got put in a cold room that they called the freezer. And they didn't know why. They told their story, tried to tell their story, but the person that they were talking to just said, "Are you seeking asylum?" Moved them into a room. They sat in that room for a half a day, had their fingerprints taken in this cold freezer of a room. They weren't sure why they were in a room that was so cold. They all mentioned, all the people we talked about this cold room.
And some were there for a day and a half. Yeah. I was just saying, some were there even a day and a half.
Oh yeah, right. So a long time, and with no information about what's going on. And then they're ushered out and put into a vehicle and taken away from the border and dropped off. And that's it. They haven't told their story to anyone yet. Well, I'm not an immigration lawyer, but I don't think that what's going on at the border, first of all, is to the letter of the law. So for all the people who say migrants who want to come in the country should follow the law, these people are following the law. Seems to me who's not following the law is the process at the border with the US Border Patrol and US Customs. And that's got to get figured out why this is going on. So they're moved away, they're taken and then dropped off. Some of them happened to meet at that time, the people who got them into the shelter were in. Others were staying in a hotel for a day and a half before a visitor to Nogales, Mexico from the United States was wandering by and said to them, "I know some people that can help you." And that's how they ended up at the shelter. The United States of America is saying to asylum seekers, "We're taking your fingerprints. That's it. Go back to Mexico." And that's that. They didn't even have a way to be in touch with these people. So what we are doing, and I think it's in violation not only our morality and of our common good, but it's probably in violation of international law about how an asylum seeker is treated. Immigration experts can tell us if that's true or not. But these people are just sort of turned a blind eye and turned away. And this is the thing that we have to be raising awareness about. That we've met two kinds of migrants: those who are crossing the desert without at a non-checkpoint, at a non-border crossing point. They're coming over the wall, around the wall, or through the wall, and they're either making it through the desert or being caught by Border Patrol. That's one group. And then there's a group of asylum seekers. And asylum seekers are going to the border and asking for asylum. And that group are just being sent back to Mexico without anything. So fortunately, at the shelter, the House of Mercy, that will send links out so you can support this program that they have there, they're bringing in attorneys, immigration and asylum seeking asylum professional attorneys, who are helping these people then start to fill out the paperwork. The United States government has a responsibility to take asylum seekers seriously. And we sat in that courtyard and talked to person after person and heard the same story. Not one of them even had a chance to really tell their story or to make their case. It didn't matter what their situation was. They were sent back to Mexico to wait an undetermined period of time. Now, this is something that we just want everyone to know that that's what's going on. So if you'd share that story, share those words, we're going to do the best we can to get some videos out so you can get a visceral feeling and response of these people and hear them, in their own voices telling these stories. This is what we need people to be paying attention to, and asking anyone who will listen if we think that's the way the United States of America should be responding to people who are in need at our southern border.
Yeah, Doug, one of the really frustrating things for me is when people say, well, why don't they just come the right way, go through the right process? And asylum seeking is a legal process that folks are trying to do. They're trying to do it the right way. They get to the border. And one of the questions we would ask everyone we interviewed, what did you think would happen at the border? And they thought at least they would have the chance to apply for asylum. But time and time again, it was, I didn't even get to tell my story. I didn't even get to, start the process. They put me in a cold room. I didn't have a sweater for my daughter. We were shivering in a freezer, they kept calling it, and then shipped off back to a town that they don't know anything about. They don't know anyone. They have no resources. And so it's frustrating on so many levels that this is how we treat people that are applying for asylum.
Anthony, Dan, Brandon, anything else out of that, or Tim, Rwanda, anything else out of those stories that you want to share?
I think, just in summary, kind of hearing those stories, I had a conversation actually after one of the interviews, or after the interviews ended. And she came up to me, and she said, thank you for coming. Thank you for what you're doing. Because we would often end the interviews saying, we hope to use your stories to inform people in the US. We hope to use your story to change things for the better. You don't know how your story is going to end yet, but you can actively participate in this hopeful change. And I think that meant a lot. And then just the opportunity to be heard. I don't have the power to go change a law or to lift Title 42 or anything like that. However, we're participating in ways we can. And hopefully we're able to use their story to get consensus, to get the backing for, change around this. And them knowing that was, I hope, cathartic. I don't know how, cathartic that would be. But these were really painful things to go back. And some people actually came up and apologized saying, hey, I wanted to share my story, but it's too painful. I don't really want to relive it. And I said, obviously, I completely understand as much as I can. And that's great. We had a lot of stories, but yeah, to be able to tell them, hey, your story will hopefully be used to help
Yeah.
change this. It meant something.
Yeah, when we talked to Sister Lika, who's the director there, about what we had heard and said, is that common to the other 30 some odd families that are there? She said, that's all of their stories. So it's not as if we're saying that out of these 30 stories and these 122 people, this is some of them. It's all of them at this shelter. They all experienced the same thing. They got to the border, they asked for asylum, they were put into a room, often a room that they would refer to as that freezer, and then were just taken out and sent into Nogales and dropped off. That is, the United States needs to do our immigration and asylum seeking in the right way. And these are the things that we were witness to ourselves and these people. And look, all of you can go there. If you want to go to that shelter yourself, we would love to connect you with that shelter. I know that so much on the border can seem so opaque and hard to understand and hard to see and so far away. I have certainly felt that. I mean, I live in Minnesota. You know, Wanda lives in Texas. Tim lives up in Portland. Brandon lives in Chicago. Anthony lives in Chicago. Like, we're a long way from this border and really knowing what's going on. On the other hand, Anthony got an airplane with Brandon on Monday, and that afternoon was riding out a bike, and a night later is sleeping in this asylum, in the shelter for asylum-seeking migrants. So it's also that close, right? If you want to meet these people or see them or connect to what's going on, we'd very much like to help you do that, because connecting to this, the human part of the story, is something that's important, especially if anybody watching this are people of common good conscience or of common good faith. If that and believe that we're supposed to care for people that are struggling. It is hard to find people more vulnerable than women and children making their way across other countries to try to get to safety. It's probably what broke all of our hearts, looking at those images of people from Haiti who have made it all the way to the U.S. Texas border, or to the Mexico-Texas border, only to be chased away with horses and put on airplanes and shipped back to Haiti. This is just not a way for our country to be responding, and it's no way for people of good conscience and good faith to be silent about it. And then we were in Ajo. And so the days before that, we were there with people who are working with people crossing the border, not as asylum seekers, but they're crossing the border as migrants, who also, by the way, don't have a legal way to get in line and come into the country. Partly because the United States, and Anthony referred to it as using the phrase Title 42, again, the Trump administration issued or put into effect a program that operates under the code Title 42, which basically says in a health crisis, you can do things that you wouldn't otherwise do when it comes to immigration. So they closed immigration to the United States across the US-Mexico border for anyone who's not a US citizen. This went into place because of COVID. This went into place months and months ago. The Biden administration has maintained it. We are asking them to lift it. We all want everyone to ask them to lift it, because it's keeping people out of this country who need to come into this country. Now, let me just be perfectly clear. We went into Mexico without any restrictions. We spent 2 days in Mexico and drove out this morning before we got on our bikes and rode 65 miles. They just checked our passports, asked us what we were doing, asked us how much money we were carrying. We didn't take a COVID test. We didn't have to do anything. One of the reporters in Nogales that saw us on the street and did an interview with us came up and said to us, hey, maybe the US government could just treat Mexicans the way they treat Americans when they're going to leave Mexico, and allow those who have the right to come into the country to come into the country. So if people that are visa holders in the United States and are Mexican citizens but not US citizens can't come in. So that's part of the reason some people are crossing the border. And also, if you want to get a visa from Mexico or Guatemala or El Salvador or Honduras, you have an extraordinarily difficult time ever getting one. You'll wait decades to get, because we don't have a legitimate worker program where someone can get a visa to come to the United States to work. We need to change those policies. Most immediately, Title 42, the one that keeps us out because of health restrictions and make it possible for people to come in, and even broader to allow other migrants to find access to the United States in a worker program. Because we don't have that, that is what is driving people to cross the border illegally. Now, look, some people cross the border illegally, or they don't cross at a port of entry because they're doing criminal actions. But the majority of people who cross that way are doing it because they don't have any other way in. If we opened up our borders to allow more people to come in the legal way, then you could separate out those people from the ones who are doing illegal activity and let Border Patrol only deal with a fraction of the people that they're having to deal with now. We watched 3 men be apprehended by Border Patrol on the road. We were driving our RV and truck through down a road, and then our bikes were coming right behind, and saw the Border Patrol come up and saw 3 men be handcuffed and put into a Border Patrol truck and looked them square in the eyes. And these guys are doing what they can to get into this country so that, I mean, I believe so they can work. Somebody might want to argue that they were drug smugglers, but look, everyone we've talked to down here who understands how the illegal drug trade works across the border recognizes drug cartels don't give their prized possession of drugs to 3 guys running through the desert. They put them in boats. They put those drugs in trucks and in cars and in airplanes and bring them through ports of entry. That's how drugs are getting in. Even the Border Patrol told us that. So this idea that we need all of this to keep drugs out, from the very same people who won't do any conversation about talking about the use of drugs in the United States, the people who want to, so that's a whole other conversation that we most certainly could have sometime. But this is the other problem, is what do we do about migration? So being close to the people working with those migrants that are coming across. We were in Ajo, Arizona, and worked with the Samaritans there. In the towns along the border, there's humanitarian groups that go out and put water in the desert. And these are incredible people. Maria Singleton set up some great meetings for us. She's one of the Samaritans in Ajo. It's incredible work that they do. They go out in the desert and they put out water because people get trapped and lost in the desert and die. We talked to a person who went out that day. This was last Saturday. She was out trying to mark water places and taking some other data. And the group that she was with found the remains of 5 different migrants in the desert. They died in the desert and they found their remains. It's hard to tell how long they'd been there, if it had been a week or if it had been months. A body decomposes and is destroyed by animals out in the desert. It's a brutal place to die. And they discovered 5 different bodies that are out there. 245 confirmed deaths in the desert in June, in the month of June. We went into one of the national parks. I think it's called the Oregon Pipe National Park. In the national park, we'll post pictures of this. There is there's a placard, a large placard. It says, everyone at the park, it's the professionally installed right there at the place where the restrooms are and all, at the entrance in the parking lot. And it tells the story about a Border Patrol agent who was killed in the park by people from Mexico who had crossed the border illegally in a gunfight. A tragic story, a terrible story. Happened in the year 2000. And there's a permanent monument to this Border Patrol agent for the sacrifice of his life. 20 years ago, 245 migrants died in the month of June in that desert. Not a word about them. Nothing mentioned. On the signage all around the park, it says to the park visitors, be careful. This is dangerous. There's illegal immigrants coming across the border. Stay in your car. Don't approach anyone. It's as if you're in a wildlife refuge and you should be afraid for your life. These people in the desert are dying in the desert. They're not killing people in the desert. More than 3,000 confirmed deaths in just the last 10 years. These are only the bodies that they have found. And there are acres after acres out there that they've never even gone to. So the tragedy of what's happening on United States property, land, United States, this is all happening in the desert in the United States. And the Border Patrol apprehends and helps people if they find them and they're struggling, but they also create an environment where these people are running for their lives through the desert. We can do better than this. So what we want you to know is there are people of good conscience. There's people running this asylum shelter. There are people working to support migrants who are crossing. There's lawyers, there's humanitarians that are caring for people's wounds when they find them and taking good care of them and visiting them when they're in detention centers. But there's a cruelty inside of our migration response, and it's intended to be cruel. Putting people in cold rooms when they seek asylum, unbelievable. Taking all of the personal belongings that a migrant has when they're apprehended. They take everything. We were with an artist. Tim and I were there and took pictures with Tom Kiefer. He's an artist. You can look him up, tomkiefer.com. And he takes photos, incredible photos of the items that were left and taken from migrants by Border Patrol and normally thrown in the garbage. He collected them. He worked in the Border Patrol office as a janitor and was seeing the food that they were carrying being thrown away, and then their personal items, journals, prayer books, Bibles, notes, wallets, jackets, belts, toothpaste. Is take all that stuff from them, send them back to Mexico with nothing, and then throw it all in the garbage. So Tom collects this stuff and makes photos out of it to capture your imagination of how often this is happening and just the cruelty. Look, even if you disagree about changing our immigration programs, our policies and practices, we don't have to be cruel. We don't have to turn people away without telling their stories in asylum seeking, putting them into cold storage. We don't have to take everything that someone has and give them a $6 check when they're sent free from detention centers. We don't have to say to people coming to visit people being held in migrant detention centers that will drive an hour and a half to go visit them as chaplains, and to have the warden of the detention center say to these chaplains that show up, you can visit one person today. They could visit 6 or 8 or 10, give them some care and some love and some comfort, but the warden at his discretion can say, you'll visit one today. There are things that happen in the process of detaining someone or approaching someone who's coming to this country for migration. It doesn't have to be so cruel. So part of the answer is to make the whole border experience more humane, more good, and more just. We can accomplish all of that and still get to later to immigration reform. We can start working on all of these things right now. But the reason it's not being worked on is most people don't know what's happening. The Border Patrol operates without any scrutiny because they're a department under Homeland Security. They're not military. They're not the sheriff. They're not the police. They're not the judges. They're part of anti-terrorism, Homeland Security. Hardly anyone ever gets to look at what Border Patrol is up to and what they're doing. So all of these interactions, all of these practices are happening behind a kind of glaze that keeps people from really knowing what's going on. And it's only when you hear these stories from the people who live closest that we tend to find out all of this. So that's our update. Look, we're riding. It's got its own narrative and story to it, but we're also meeting these people, and we're going to do all that we can to get these stories out of what these folks are experiencing. And frankly, it has to do with not only just overall morality and justice, but the righteousness of this country, of the United States. If you're watching this and you're in the United States, this is our government. And to coin a phrase we like, it is a government of we the people. This is our government. This is, in other words, us. That's why you can redress your government. That's why you can raise your voice. That's why you can protest. That's why the government cannot restrict you from saying the things you need to say to anyone. And so we ask you all, as we like to say, to wake up, to stand up, and to speak up about these issues. So long sermon there. Sorry about that. Or as they say, sorry, not sorry about that. All right. Anybody else? I'm just gonna check and see. We're putting this out on live stream, and every once in a while, other people have a comment or question, so there may not be any. A bunch of people saying thank you for sharing. Well, you're welcome for sharing. If you have any questions, we'd love to take them. You can, if you're already on the Zoom here, you can pop in on that, or if you're on social media, you can put out some questions. I'll give a little update on where we're going and what we're doing over the next couple of days. And so if you have questions, we'd love to have them. Put them in the chat rooms on whatever social media you're watching this on, or if you're in the Zoom space here, you can do it in the chat room over there. All right, so tomorrow, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to reiterate, you know, you guys are on this trip for the next over a month and a half left. And
We
you've
have
made
7
it, or
weeks
how,
left. Yeah, we're
7
week
weeks.
2 of
So it's-
9. Yeah.
So you've made it really accessible and easy to kind of pop in and out, you know, come down for 3 or 4 days, participate where one is able to participate, and you still get that full experience. And that's really great. And so if there are people that are kind of on the fence and really want to kind of really experience and get to know what is happening, like you said, you've made it super easy. So I think that just deserves mentioning again.
At wethepeopleride.org is where you find out all of the information about all of this, where we're going to be. If you want to track us live, there's a live tracker. We have a little bike computer, and you can just, when we're riding, it shows right where we are. So, you know, if you get the hankering right then, you come join us right at that moment, or make your plans ahead of time and come and see us as we travel. We'd love to have you join us. Tomorrow, we're going to be in Douglas, Arizona, which is the sister city to Agua Prieta, Mexico. And then on Saturday and Sunday, we'll be in Agua Prieta. And then we'll start riding from there toward El Paso. And then we'll get to El Paso in the middle of next week. A lot of people have asked when we're going to be in Del Rio, because that's the border spot that has gained such important interest because of the way the Haitian immigrants were treated at the border there. We're going to be there the 7th, 8th, and 9th of October. And so if you want to be part of what we're going to be doing there in Del Rio, we'd love to have you join us. And then we'll make our way down around October 15th to McAllen and Reynosa, Mexico, McAllen, Texas, and Reynosa, Mexico. And then we finish the US-Mexico border around the 20th or so. And then we make our way up the coast, because there's a whole other question about what does immigration look like in the other places in our country that are not along the US-Mexico border. Our immigration policy is bad everywhere, and really does need to be better. One of the people that we met in Ajo, her name is Dora, and Dora works in another one of the border towns along the way. And Dora had this great line at the end of our interview that you'll hear when her video comes out. But she says, we work really hard to help tragedy not be so tragic. And I just thought that was such a powerful way to say it, working hard to make things that are tragedies not be so tragic. There's some very difficult things that happen anytime someone has to migrate or someone seeks asylum, and we can make that process a good one. It doesn't have to be such a harsh and painful one. So
I got one last thought. I heard just a little context to the Haitian issue, and I haven't followed this up yet to see how valid it is, but there's reports that some of these Haitians actually left Haiti up to 8 years ago. So everybody asks, okay, so how in the world are 10,000 people going to get from a little island about this big, you know, to Del Rio? You know, is George Soros flying them on a plane, or, you know, how are they getting there? And I mean, it's an incredible story. I hope somebody could find it out. We can figure it out, because they work their way all the way up, and because some of these families left after the one big earthquake about 8 years ago that just about leveled the whole place, and then they just sort of went on this journey, and so that even speaks even more to the intentionalness and the desperation, and you know what it would be like to do that. So I thought that gives some kind of context. It wasn't just like 10,000 people got together and said, "Hey, let's go to Texas," you know.
we do have a question. Mark has asked, how come the Biden administration isn't doing more about this? Mark, that's a question that we're raising as best we can with the Biden administration. A lot of us are big supporters of Joe Biden. I certainly am. I wanted him to be president. I want him to be a successful president. I trust his leadership as president. And I think they're not doing the right things on this. I think they need to change course, and they need to address, they need to remove this Title 42 that keeps people out for health reasons. We need to immediately move to change our border policies and practices, and the Border Patrol has to be brought under control. And look, I'm just going to rant for another minute and a half or so here. We look through the border wall. Wanda and I were standing right next to each other, looking through the border wall in Nogales into the United States. And there's the big steel 30-foot high border wall. And then the US Border Patrol said, that's not enough. So they put a metal mesh on the other side, on the US side of the border wall. So you can't get your hand through it, because they didn't want people from Mexico touching the hands of the people in the United States, that even if they're part of their family. So they put mesh up there. That's like wall number 2. Then that wasn't enough. So they put up this serpentine wire, it's razor wire over the top of it. So that creates wall number 3. And then they didn't like the protests that were happening right at the wall. So they built a traffic barrier about 16 feet out to make wall number 4. And then all around us, there was high-tech surveillance equipment and helicopters and drones and border patrol riding up and down in trucks along the way. It's a militarized zone. And yet people said to us yet today, we have to get control of our borders. And when you ask them, what more do we need? No. And in that way, I'm bringing all this up because it's so similar to Afghanistan, where 20 years ago, we went into Afghanistan, and for 20 years, the military told us we have to do more, we have to put more in, stay longer. Military is the answer. We militarized our border in the mid 1990s and then really ramped it up after 2001 terrorist attack and turned it over to Homeland Security. And the same story has been going on. More military, more money, billions of dollars spent on this border wall and border security. Think about this for a minute. Billions of dollars spent to keep people out, so that, to finish an argument of some people, so that we don't spend a bunch of money on social services. We're going to spend more money, billions more, on border security to keep, it doesn't even make financial sense. And it certainly doesn't make human sense. And this is Joe Biden and the Biden administration's chance to do at our border the right thing, like was done in stopping the endless war in Afghanistan. It hasn't worked. We heard today from people saying like, oh, there's just so many people coming over the border. How much more border wall do you need? 5 layers, 10 layers, another 1,000 people? Like, it, at some point, you just have to look at this and say, what we are doing is completely ineffectual. Let's do something different. We have a lot of ideas. People know a lot more about this than we do, have even better ideas. There are so many good ideas. The bad ideas are the ones we keep doing. So if you have any chance to write a letter to the administration, to talk to your senator, to talk to your congressperson, anyone at the federal level, ask them to address the failed project of the militarization of the border. It has not worked. It has caused unbelievable human harm and damage. It's wasted billions of dollars. It's harmed the environment. It's just a loss all the way around. So why the Biden administration isn't doing much about it? It's not their focus right now, and we want it to be. That really gets me peppered up. So anybody else, anything you want to say? I'll be going at this for a full 60 minutes on the button. So we should probably let the good people go, and we'll be back out on the road at 7 a.m., 7:30 in the morning, making our way over to Agua Prayer 10. Can't wait to tell you those stories from there as well. So, all right, if nobody has anything else, thanks, and we'll check in with you in a week or so. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Wanda.
Thanks.
Tim. Thanks everybody that was on. Bye.